They called her elegant, graceful, the designer to the stars. But behind every dress she created, behind every red carpet smile, there was silence. Heavy and unbroken. Lwren Scott wasn't just designing clothes, she was designing armor. Every stitch was control, every gown a mask, and beneath it all, a woman slowly disappearing behind perfection. She dressed Nicole Kidman, Angelina Jolie, Michelle Obama. Her gowns graced the Oscars, Cannes, the Met Gala. But in the world she built, the one shimmering with fame and light, she carried a darkness no one dared to look at. This is the story of a woman who made beauty her language and silence her curse. The girl who wanted to be seen. Before the fame, before the name, she was Lwren Bambro, a girl from small-town Utah, where skies were wide and dreams were distant. She was taller than everyone, quieter than most, and already searching for a place where she could belong. She grew up surrounded by simplicity and longed for sophistication. She wanted to be part of something grand, something artistic, something seen. At 18, she left home. New York, Paris, Los Angeles. Every city became a mirror reflecting what she could become and what she had to hide. She became a model, standing over 6 feet tall, impossibly poised. Her elegance turned heads, but inside, she never believed she fit in. Because in an industry built on illusions, she was learning the first cruel rule of fashion. To survive, you must disappear behind the image. And no one saw how much she already had. The metamorphosis. By the 1990s, Lwren had transformed from muse to maker. The camera that once defined her became her tool, not her master. She traded the runway's fleeting glamour for the quiet discipline of the sketchbook. Long nights hunched over fabric swatches, notes scribbled in margins, pins scattered like constellations across her studio floor. She began as a stylist, meticulous, intuitive, obsessed with detail. Then she became something rarer, a visionary designer whose clothes didn't just dress a body, they defined an attitude. Her silhouettes stretched like poetry. Tall, deliberate, composed. Every hemline had logic, every seam a pulse. Her gowns whispered of old-world sophistication, but carried the sharpness of modern rebellion. Power and restraint stitched together in a single form. She designed for women who were seen, film stars, first ladies, fashion icons. But somehow she remained invisible herself. Her name appeared in credits and captions, but her presence never filled the frame. It was almost as if she wanted it that way, to hide behind her art, to let beauty speak for her. Her signature was perfection, immaculate tailoring, lines so clean they looked inevitable. She built an empire on precision, the illusion that nothing ever slipped, that every fold obeyed her will. To the world, her collections looked effortless. But beneath that elegance was obsession, countless fittings, sleepless nights, and a constant war between the woman she was and the standard she demanded of herself. Her clients trusted her. Her friends admired her. They saw calm, control, composure, the armor of someone who always knew what to do. But control, when built on insecurity, becomes a prison. And hers had no door. Every compliment felt conditional. Every standing ovation carried the quiet question, will they still love it next season? Success became a performance, not a comfort. She smiled through exhaustion, networked through heartbreak, and created through an emptiness that success only deepened. The runway lights grew brighter, but inside the shadows lengthened. Each collection raised the bar higher and tightened the noose around her piece. Her studio became both sanctuary and cell. To her assistants, she was the embodiment of elegance. To herself, she was never enough. The more she achieved, the less she felt alive, Because when perfection becomes your identity, failure isn't an event, it's extinction. And so she worked harder, slept less, polished every detail until it gleamed like glass. Every applause was a heartbeat, every silence a warning. She couldn't stop, not because she loved the chase, but because stopping meant confronting the loneliness waiting behind the applause. And the world kept clapping, louder, brighter, faster, never realizing they were celebrating the sound of her breaking. The famous love story. Then came the love the tabloids would not stop writing about. Mick Jagger, rock legend, eternal icon. The embodiment of every life she'd once only dreamed of. To the world, it was the perfect pairing. The designer and the rock star. Elegance and electricity, art and fame entwined. Every photograph of them together seemed effortless. The smiles, the intertwined hands, the matching black coats at airports. They looked like two constellations that had finally found each other in the chaos of celebrity skies. But what the cameras didn't see was the distance that fame creates, even between two people who seem to have everything. Lwren adored him, truly. He was her muse, her mirror, her reminder that life could be wild and glittering. And yet, she was never just his. She was orbiting, always slightly outside the light. Because even in love, she lived in someone else's shadow. And when that someone's shadow belonged to a global icon, it stretched across every corner of her identity. In interviews, she smiled carefully when asked about him. In private, she wondered whether the world would ever say her name without his attached. She designed gowns for the most powerful women alive, yet headlines still reduced her to Mick Jagger's girlfriend. It wasn't envy, it was erasure. The slow disappearance of self beneath the weight of a legend. She followed him across continents, London, Tokyo, Rio, cities blurred into hotel suites, backstage corridors, and after parties that all looked the same. She was there in the wings, quietly watching as thousands screamed his name, her own heart echoing with silence. When he stepped into the spotlight, she smiled. But when the lights dimmed, she sat in the shadows, sketching alone. Her love was genuine, fierce, patient, loyal. But adoration cannot cure isolation. And sometimes love, when given entirely, leaves no space for the giver. Her world became smaller even as her fame grew. Phone calls unanswered, deadlines missed, inspiration fading. Her brand, once the darling of the fashion elite, began to struggle. Clients whispered about delays, investors grew nervous. The glamour remained on the surface, but beneath it the numbers were bleeding. Still, she never asked for help, because asking meant admitting weakness, and weakness was the one thing her carefully built persona could never afford. She'd spent her entire life proving that grace meant control, that elegance was composure under pressure. And now, as her debts grew and the walls quietly closed in, she held her head higher, as if posture alone could keep the collapse from happening. Those closest to her noticed the exhaustion behind her eyes, the long silences between words. But Lwren had mastered the art of appearing fine. Her social media posts glowed with polished perfection. Her captions radiated calm. In reality, she was unraveling. One quiet evening, one missed call, one unopened invoice at a time. To the world, she was living a dream, the love, the luxury, the legacy. But dreams, when stretched too far, begin to tear at the edges, and hers was tearing quietly, beautifully, invisibly. Love made her visible, and invisible all at once. Because sometimes the brightest spotlight hides the deepest shadow. The slow unraveling. In the months before her death, the signs were there. Canceled shows, unpaid bills, unanswered messages. She withdrew from friends, avoided calls, and smiled less often. But in the world of luxury and illusion, silence is easy to hide behind sequins. She told no one how much the pressure was crushing her, how the empire she built was slowly collapsing under its own beauty. Her friends would later say she seemed tired. Not of work, of life itself. The fashion world kept spinning, indifferent and relentless. Every season demanded rebirth, and she had no strength left to reinvent herself again. The applause had stopped meaning anything. The sketches no longer spoke. And when the lights dimmed in her apartment that March evening in 2014, the world didn't hear the sound of her goodbye. Only the silence she left behind. The world's response. When the news broke, the world froze for a heartbeat. Then came the rush. The headlines, the hashtags, the hollow condolences. Every outlet carried the same cruel reduction. Mick Jagger's girlfriend found dead. 3 words that stripped away decades of ambition, brilliance, and fragility. 3 words that reduced an artist to an accessory. Her own name, Lwren Scott, appeared in smaller letters, below the fold, as if the story belonged more to the man she loved than to the life she lived. In an instant, her legacy became a headline, her humanity an afterthought. Television anchors spoke in polished sympathy. Fashion magazines printed black and white tributes framed in chic typography. But behind the aesthetic, there was absence. No real conversation, no uncomfortable honesty. Because depression doesn't fit the aesthetic of glamour. Because grief makes the audience uneasy. Because mental illness doesn't photograph well. The world that once adored her designs now consumed her tragedy. Clips from red carpets played on loop, her laughter, her gowns, her glow, as if beauty could explain the pain. The same cameras that had captured her elegance now lingered on the windows of her apartment, zooming in on police tape, feeding curiosity disguised as mourning. Her friends mourned quietly, away from microphones and flashbulbs. They spoke of her kindness, her dry humor, her endless generosity. They remembered how she brought calm into chaos, how her presence made even the most chaotic fitting feel like ritual. But those words rarely made the headlines. They weren't sensational enough to sell. In the fashion world, condolences appeared between runway shows. Designers dedicated a single collection, a single Instagram post. And then, the lights came back on. Models walked, cameras clicked, champagne flowed. The show went on, because it always does. But for those who loved her, the silence afterward was deafening. Her studio remained untouched for weeks, sketches pinned to boards, fabric samples still hanging like ghosts of Dia's unfinished. Unsent emails blinked in her drafts folder. Patterns she'd been perfecting were left mid-line, as though she had simply stepped away for a moment, planning to return. And perhaps in some quiet corner of that empty room, her spirit still lingers. Not haunting, just waiting for the world to look beyond the glamour and see the woman who had always been there. The artist, the dreamer, the perfectionist who tried to make beauty her cure. But the world moved on. It always does. The next season began. New names replaced the old. New collections sparkled under the same indifferent lights. The headlines faded, the sympathy posts vanished, and the silence continued. Only now, it echoed without her. The applause resumed. The world kept spinning, but somewhere in its rhythm, a note was missing. The quiet grace of Lwren Scott, the after image. Lwren Scott was more than a designer. She was an artist who believed that beauty could heal, that elegance could protect, that if she crafted perfection, maybe the world would stop seeing her pain. But beauty, like silence, can be a trap. The very grace she created became the mask that hid her despair. Her story reminds us that even in the brightest rooms, darkness finds a way to linger. Even among applause, loneliness echoes loudest. She left behind gowns that shimmered under light, and a truth that still burns quietly behind them. Sometimes the people who make the world beautiful can't find beauty for themselves. She lived to make others shine, and died in silence. If you or someone you know is struggling, remember, silence isn't strength. Reach out. Talk. There's always someone willing to listen.